So I was talking to a friend the other day, and she was telling me about this guy she's been seeing. Everything was going well, but she ended with this line I've heard so many times before. She just said, "It's different. You know, with black men, it's just different." And that got me thinking. How many of us have either said that ourselves or heard a friend say it? That feeling that there's a different dynamic, a different set of unspoken rules, or a different vibe when it comes to dating and relationships. This isn't about pointing fingers or placing blame on anyone. It's about opening up a conversation about something so many women feel but rarely talk about in the open. Why is that? Why do so many women feel that black men treat them differently? In this video, we're going to explore that. My goal here is to foster understanding, not division. Reason 1. The weight of historical and cultural baggage. To really understand the dynamics we see today, we have to be willing to take a step back and look at the larger picture. It's impossible to talk about how black men move through relationships without acknowledging the profound weight of history that shapes that journey. This isn't about living in the past, it's about recognizing that the past is never truly past. It echoes in the present, influencing behaviors, instincts, and perspectives in ways we might not even consciously realize. For generations, black men in America have navigated a world that was systematically designed to undermine their humanity, their authority, and their role as protectors and providers. During slavery and the Jim Crow era that followed, the very concept of the black family was under attack. Men were brutally separated from their partners and children, denied the right to protect them, and systematically emasculated by a society that portrayed them as anything but strong, capable leaders. These weren't just random acts of cruelty, they were a calculated part of a system intended to enforce a social order. The stereotypes that emerged from that time, like the caricature of the Sambo, a simple, subservient, non-threatening figure, were tools used to justify this oppression and strip away a sense of masculine identity and autonomy. This historical context created a complex dynamic within the black community itself, particularly around the idea of strength. In response to this systemic oppression, the image of the strong black woman emerged as a necessary archetype for survival. She was the unwavering pillar, holding families and communities together against unimaginable pressure. While this strength is undoubtedly a testament to resilience, it also created a certain relational template. For some black men, being raised by or surrounded by such formidable strength can create an unspoken pressure to match that intensity, to be an equally strong pillar in return. This can sometimes leave little room for vulnerability or what might be perceived as softness. For others, it might create a subconscious pull towards a different dynamic altogether, one that feels less like a negotiation between two pillars of strength and more like a respite, a chance to explore a different kind of partnership. This isn't about one being better than the other. It's about understanding how these deeply ingrained social roles can influence attraction and interaction. This history also forged a powerful instinct for protection and a learned sense of mistrust. For centuries, black men witnessed the vulnerabilities of black women and children in the face of systemic violence and discrimination. This bred a fierce generational protectiveness, a deeply ingrained duty to shield their loved ones from harm. But this protective instinct exists alongside a historical and often ongoing mistrust of systems and people outside the community. This mistrust wasn't born in a vacuum. It was learned through painful, repeated experiences of betrayal, exclusion, and violence. So, when a black man enters an interracial relationship, he isn't just entering a partnership with one person. He is also, on some level, navigating this entire history. There can be a subconscious calculus. Will she understand this protectiveness? Can she be trusted not just with his heart, but with his cultural reality? Does she recognize the weight of that history, or will she dismiss it? This isn't a sign of being hung up on race. It's the result of a lived experience that teaches caution. It's the emotional labor of constantly wondering if you are being seen as an individual or as a stereotype, and it can understandably lead to a more guarded or deliberate approach in the early stages of a relationship. All of this combines to form a complex cultural lens. It's a way of seeing the world and relationships that is shaped by a legacy of resilience, protection, and a cautious evaluation of safety. Understanding this lens isn't about making excuses, it's about building empathy. It's about seeing the person in front of you not just for who they are today, but understanding the deep roots that helped shape them. Reason 2, the novelty or fetishization dynamic. Another powerful layer to this conversation, and perhaps one of the most uncomfortable to unpack, revolves around the ideas of novelty and fetishization. This is a complex dance that often happens on both sides of the equation, and it rarely leads to a genuine connection. It's a dynamic where people are often attracted to an idea of a person rather than the person themselves, and it fundamentally changes how two people interact. On one side, there can be what some describe as a trophy or status dynamic. For some men, dating outside their race, and particularly dating a white woman, can be unconsciously seen as a symbol of having made it or broken a barrier. This thinking is rooted in a painful history where black men were systematically denied access and status, and where images of success and beauty were overwhelmingly represented by one standard. In this context, an interracial relationship can sometimes feel less like a meeting of hearts and more like a transaction, a tangible sign of achieving a level of acceptance or success that was once out of reach. The woman in this scenario risks being valued not for her unique individuality, but for what she represents in a broader social narrative. This can create a relationship that feels built on a foundation of external validation rather than mutual respect and authentic love, making the connection feel conditional and ultimately fragile. Conversely, and just as problematically, is the issue of fetishization from some non-black women. This is when attraction is based not on personality or character, but on a set of harmful stereotypes and exoticized fantasies. It's reducing an entire human being to a caricature based on myths about aggression, athletic prowess, or sexuality. You might see this in backhanded compliments or curious, probing questions that feel more like an examination than getting to know someone. A woman might lead with, "I've always been attracted to black men," or "I just love your culture," statements that lump a diverse group into a single category and feel objectifying. Men are incredibly perceptive. They can sense when they are being seen as a checklist item or an experiment rather than a person. This puts them in a difficult position. Some might lean into the stereotype, performing a version of masculinity they believe is expected of them, which creates a false and unsustainable dynamic from the very start. Others are immediately put off and guarded, putting up walls because they feel they are not being seen for who they truly are, but for a fantasy. In both cases, the man's behavior is altered. He is either performing or protecting himself, which directly feeds into the feeling of being treated differently. The result of this two-way street of novelty and fetishization is a relationship built on quicksand. When the initial thrill of the taboo or the excitement of the fantasy wears off, there's often little substance left to hold the connection together. The foundation isn't built on shared values, common interests, or genuine affection. It's built on preconceived notions, social baggage, and idealized illusions. This is why these dynamics can feel so confusing and hurtful. One person might feel they are being put on a pedestal for all the wrong reasons, while the other might feel they are never truly being seen at all. It creates a situation where authenticity is the first casualty, and without that, it's nearly impossible to build the trust and vulnerability that a real, lasting relationship requires. It turns a potential partnership into a performance, and that is a weight that few connections can bear for long. Reason 3. differences in communication and emotional expression. Beyond the larger historical and social forces, some of the most immediate and confusing feelings of difference can come from the day-to-day ways we talk and connect. We often forget that communication is not a universal language. It's deeply coded by our upbringing and cultural background. The way we express affection, resolve conflict, or even just tell a story is learned behavior, and what feels natural and clear in one community can feel completely foreign or even hostile in another. This isn't about right or wrong, but about different emotional dialects, and this is where many cross-cultural relationships hit a snag without even realizing why. One of the most common points of friction is in styles of directness. In many communities, including many Black subcultures, direct, unfiltered communication is valued as a sign of authenticity, respect, and strength. There's a sense that real talk is better than polite talk, that it's more honest to say exactly what you mean, even if it's delivered with a blunt force that can be jarring to an outsider. This can apply to everything from playful banter and teasing to serious relationship conversations. A partner might call you out directly on something they see as foolishness, not to be cruel, but because they believe in addressing things head-on. However, to someone raised in a culture that prizes indirectness, where criticism is softened, delivered with caveats, or hinted at gently to preserve harmony, this directness can feel like a verbal assault. It can be perceived as harsh, aggressive, or unnecessarily confrontational. The person being direct feels they are being real and transparent, while the person on the receiving end feels attacked and disrespected. Without an understanding that this is a cultural difference in communication style and not a personal attack, resentment can build on both sides. One person starts walking on eggshells, feeling like their partner is always angry, while the other feels like they're dealing with someone who is passive-aggressive and can't handle the truth. This extends beyond just conversation into the very expression of emotion, particularly for men. In a world that has often demanded their resilience, some expressions of masculinity within Black culture are deeply tied to the idea of projecting strength and stoicism. This isn't necessarily an inability to feel, it's often a learned form of protection. In the face of systemic challenges, showing vulnerability can be perceived as a luxury one cannot afford. Emotional expression might therefore be channeled into actions rather than words, providing for, protecting, and showing up for family rather than through lengthy verbal affirmations or open discussions of fear and anxiety. This protective masculinity can be a profound form of love and care, but from the outside, it can be easily misinterpreted as coldness, emotional unavailability, or a lack of depth. A partner might crave verbal reassurance like, "I'm feeling vulnerable about this," and instead see a stoic face and get a practical solution, leaving them feeling unseen and unloved. Meanwhile, the man might feel that his steady presence and actions, which he sees as the very proof of his commitment, are being completely overlooked and devalued. It's crucial to understand that this is not a universal rule, but a common cultural clash that requires a tremendous amount of awareness, patience, and translation from both partners. It's about learning to hear the care in the directness and to see the vulnerability in the stoicism. It requires creating a new, shared language in the relationship where both people feel safe to express their needs and are willing to learn the emotional dialect of the other. The goal isn't for one person to change their native style completely, but to build a bridge between two valid ways of being in the world, so that communication becomes a tool for connection rather than a source of confusion and hurt. Reason 4. The prove-it mentality and trust barriers. Beneath the surface of many interactions, there often lies a quiet, unspoken question that can shape the entire dynamic of a relationship. For a Black man dating a non-Black woman, that question is often, "Do you truly see me or for your idea of me?" This isn't about paranoia or looking for problems where they don't exist. It's a question born from a lifetime of lived experience, from countless microaggressions and macroaggressions where he was reduced to a stereotype, a threat, or a novelty long before he was ever seen as a complete person. This history creates a protective layer, a necessary filter that he uses to navigate the world. And when he enters an interracial relationship, that filter doesn't just disappear. It becomes a part of the early courtship, often manifesting as a prove-it mentality. This mentality isn't about setting someone up to fail. It's a form of self-preservation. After years of encountering people who hold unconscious biases or outright fetishes, a man might enter a new relationship with a degree of healthy skepticism. He might be listening extra closely not just to what is said, but how it's said. He might be watching for signs that she is genuinely interested in his thoughts and his history, or if she is simply projecting a fantasy onto him. He might cautiously introduce a topic about race or a personal experience with discrimination, not just to share, but to gauge her reaction. Does she dismiss it? Does she become defensive? Does she center her own feelings of guilt or discomfort? Or does she listen, seek to understand, and validate his experience? These are subtle tests of sincerity, of her awareness of the world he inhabits, and most importantly, of her commitment to understanding that world without making him solely responsible for her education. This guardedness is a defense mechanism against the profound hurt that comes from being stereotyped by someone you are beginning to care for. It's a way of trying to ensure that the connection is real before investing fully and making oneself vulnerable. From the woman's perspective, however, this can feel incredibly confusing and unfair. She might feel she is being held accountable for the actions of others or for societal ills she didn't create. She might be putting her best foot forward, expressing genuine interest and affection, only to be met with a wall of skepticism or a seemingly endless series of tests. It can feel like she is being treated differently, with a level of scrutiny and doubt that she doesn't experience from other partners. She might think, "Why can't he just take me at my word? Why is he so guarded?" What she may not immediately see is that this guardedness is rarely personal in the beginning. It is not about her individually, but about the cumulative weight of every time his humanity was overlooked before her. His slower pace of vulnerability isn't a lack of interest. It's a cautious and measured approach to protect a heart that has likely been wounded by precisely the kind of situation he is trying to avoid. He is trying to determine if the space between them is safe enough for him to be his full, unedited self, without having to perform, explain, or apologize for his blackness. This process, while entirely understandable from his vantage point, inevitably creates a different relational pace, one that requires immense patience, empathy, and a willingness from both people to sit in the discomfort until trust is slowly and earned built. So, after understanding all of this, where does it leave us? If you're a woman who has felt this difference, what can you actually do with that feeling? And if you're a man listening and recognizing some of these patterns in yourself, how do you move toward building something healthier and more genuine? The answer isn't about finding a simple trick, but about committing to a process of mutual understanding. The first and most crucial step for everyone involved is radical self-awareness. We all have to be brave enough to look inward and honestly question our own biases and motivations. It's uncomfortable work, but it's the foundation of any real connection across cultural lines. Ask yourself the hard questions before you expect answers from someone else. For women, this means taking a sincere and unflinching look at the source of your attraction. It's important to ask yourself, why am I drawn to black men? Is it because of a specific person whose character, humor, and spirit I genuinely admire? Or is it based on an idea, a stereotype, or a fantasy I've built in my head? There's a profound difference between being attracted to someone for who they are and being attracted to an image of what they represent. Once in a relationship, your role is to communicate openly and create a safe space for honesty. But even more importantly, it's to listen. Be willing to listen without becoming defensive, to learn without making him your sole educator on race, and to validate his experiences even if they are far outside your own frame of reference. For men, this self-awareness involves a similar introspection. It's about questioning your own intentions. Are you seeking a true partner, a whole individual with her own complexities and flaws? Or are you seeking an idea, a symbol of status, a notion of something different, or a specific type of validation? It's also about courageously challenging the instinct to remain guarded. While protection is understandable, true intimacy cannot bloom without vulnerability. This means working to communicate your expectations, your fears, and your needs clearly, rather than expecting her to pass unseen tests. It's about giving the relationship and the person a fair chance to prove themselves through their consistent actions, while also being open enough to show who you truly are. The bottom line is that the strongest relationships, regardless of race, are built on this very principle, seeing and valuing each other as complete individuals. It's about peering past the stereotypes, the social baggage, and the cultural scripts to truly witness the human being in front of you. It requires patience, empathy, and a willingness to sometimes misunderstand each other, but to always circle back with care and a desire to get it right. It's not always easy, but the reward, a connection based on authentic seeing, is worth the effort. What we're really talking about is the deeply human need to be seen, understood, and valued for who we are at our core. The experience of being treated differently, whether you're the one feeling it or the one being told you're doing it, is rarely simple. It's a tangled knot woven from threads of history, cultural norms, personal psychology, and often our own unconscious biases. It can be frustrating, confusing, and even painful because it touches on something we all want, to connect authentically with another person. But by taking the time to understand these underlying factors, by untangling that not just a little, we do something powerful. We move beyond just reacting to patterns and we start to see the people behind them. This understanding is the first and most crucial step toward breaking those patterns altogether and building something new in their place. Genuine, meaningful connections built on a foundation of mutual respect and empathy, not assumptions or projections. This conversation doesn't end here. In many ways, it's just beginning. I really want to hear from you. What do you think? Have you experienced this dynamic in your own life, from either side? Your stories and perspectives are what make this dialogue real. So please, share your respectful and thoughtful experiences in the comments below. Let's learn from each other and continue to have this important conversation with openness and care. And if this video gave you a new perspective or helped you feel a little less alone in your experience, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more content that aims to foster understanding, one conversation at a time. Thanks for listening.